Hello and welcome to another episode of the DewatchPod Black Mirror podcast. I am Jorgen Smorgasbord.
And I'm Jim with a G.
That's right. And for this one, we're opening straight away. Dear listener, should you watch this episode of Black Mirror on 3? Yes.
And actually an enthusiastic yes for once.
Yeah,
I think full on. I don't actually have much reservations at all.
Absolutely. Now, that being said, we're going to talk about the episode now.
I'm not going to spoil it very quickly.
Now, Jim, so I'm having a bit of an issue here.
Okay. It doesn't have anything to do with the burnt out husk of a steel concrete structure that we're recording this in?
Well, sort of. Because you see, in this burnt out husk, there's cables.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if those cables being melted or not will affect us being able to call hell to complain.
See, that was a problem I actually noticed in hour 4, that the dial-up tone was not actually elevator music, it was just electric noise. Potentially from some sort of torture machine down there, but I have called them up again, this time hearing a different noise that sounds more like the screaming of the damned.
So, you think they're just not... You think they've shuttered customer support on account of the apocalypse?
I mean, that just seems counterproductive. We're calling it because the apocalypse should not be happening, and quite frankly, if we're getting billed for sacrifices we made, that still didn't stop the apocalypse. I mean, they have to pick a lane here.
Yeah, no, and I am burning as we speak. I'm physically burning. My skin is turning to ash. It's going layers deeper now, and I just really need to get past the robot lady.
The demonic creatures ravaging my insides currently should really be put on hold until we get this thing resolved, but they don't have actual functionality for that.
Yeah, no. What do we have to blame for it, I think it's lawyers. Lawyers got us here.
I think it's politics. I think it's the politicians, and I'm not going to specify any further than that, but yeah, I think that's the reason.
Now, for those of you who are also burning in pain, maybe we should look at how we got here.
Maybe we should. We did have some good entertainment to watch while we were, waiting out the clock here.
Yeah, no. Unfortunately, it did turn out to be real and end the world.
Really a bad streak of luck, but...
Sort of a Jonas Awful situation, if you will.
I'm not sure I understand that, but... I would love to hear the explanation of that coming later. But shall we move into what we have watched today?
Yeah, no. So the thing that happened to burn the world is a lady didn't manage to kill the 3 correct people, but killed 3 people and one of them was invalid.
Yeah.
More specifically, in this episode of Black Mirror, where we meet a young, I want to say, Indian?
South Asian at the very least. I don't think they actually confirm it. They just... This is taking place in 1979, so when they say Indian, they could mean anyone from, Vietnam to Iran.
Maybe Pakistan.
Quite possibly.
British people don't care. She is Muslim, I believe, but I'm not certain about that either. So we're really in a situation here. That being said, she's having a bad time at work. She summons a demon. The demon's like, unfortunately, due to you summoning me, you have to kill 3 people. She does it, but one of them doesn't count. And in the end, she really tries her darndest to kill a Tory who's going to become British Hitler, and fails, and thereby dooms the world to nuclear fire.
Yeah. And that's where we are. I think that's pretty much it, right? I think there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in this episode, and I am curious, really. Do you want to do a thesis statement, or what do you think the themes of this episode is? Because this one did genuinely engage me. Because we've had episodes in the past where me looking for themes or a thesis statement is more of a, trying to get into the author's or the writer's mind to see if did they think this through. This time, I actually think there's a lot to bite into.
Yeah, no, we're dealing with real art, and real art has more than one interpretation and is quite open to the reader. Now, I guess I'll start easy. This isn't a Black Mirror episode. Probably it's not about technology. It's fantasy again, a different kind, I suppose.
You could probably say something about like social technology and mass media and such, but like it's
Yeah.
not really something that the plot actually focuses in
Yeah.
on particularly deeply.
Yeah, no, and as such, I honestly this is a lot to chew on.
Yeah, I because I have had some
Please.
somewhat developed thoughts about this. I think essentially, to me, what this immediately strikes to me is about judgment in the form, or like judgment that comes from being in a system. And fundamentally, I think if you were to take the episode at face value, I think fundamentally it's a rejection of that sort of like utilitarian vigilantism and more into a deontological framework. Because I think the interesting thing is that despite us mentioning the whole nuclear apocalypse thing being the ending of this episode, it's actually kind of a happy ending, framed that way.
This is a love story.
This is a love story.
It's sort of, I guess that it has multiple twists.
Oh, yeah.
And it being a love story is the final twist.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's a love story between two outcasts, I would say.
Yes.
One who is essentially trying to assimilate, trying to integrate, and trying to be what the society that they find themselves in want them to be, and the other who is fundamentally
Alien.
Yeah, completely alien and embraces that alienness. Like I read an interesting thing here on the Wikipedia page for this episode is that the demon was originally conceived of as a punk rather than as this like his appearance is based on like the sort of glam pop of the 70s.
Yeah, no, he specifically takes the appearance of the lead singer of Boney M in Rasputin.
Yeah, so very much dolled up. And I think it's like I think the punk origin of him makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So,
and this works too, right? It's an outsider, it's anti-establishment. Crucially, he's black.
He's black.
And it conveys like many layers. Now here's a fun fact about Boney M that I don't know if you're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
They're a German band.
I did know that actually, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the real people must very much be familiar with the being an ethnic minority subplot of this episode.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think there's some very obvious like allusions. Okay, it's probably beyond allusions. It's just like a point about racism, right? Like a big part of this episode is about racism, but it kind of the episode overall I think goes a bit up and down on how much that is the point of the plot. And I think there is something to be said about the demon who is our deuteragonist, I suppose, being black, yes, but also like clearly actually alien in a way, and like actually wanting to be that way in a sense. But he also has his own system to conform to that he then eventually, in conjunction with the nuclear apocalypse, kind of decides, that system also wasn't good. Just because it was alien to the society I find myself in doesn't mean it had the right idea about things.
Yeah, no, and I think I am sort of very interested in media that at least appears on some level to be advocating for political violence. And this episode, more than most, comes to the conclusion of burn it all down.
Yeah. But it's a very interesting thing, right? Like, because, I mean, maybe this is where we should go into the plot by plot here. But I think that is a deeply complicated message here.
Yes. the episode does not know with any certainty, or like it. I suppose I at this point we actually have to give like real credit and not just extend a fig leaf. Like this episode actually, like doesn't deal with its like it doesn't resolve itself head on in any way. Like it is sort of self-enclosed, and we are sort of left to take from it what we will.
Yeah, I think like that is maybe the one thing about this episode that I think so distinctly sets it apart from other episodes here.
Yes.
Like it feels actually intellectually humble in a way. Like it's saying it poses a lot of things and actually deals with them. I think some things better than
Yeah.
others, but it fundamentally says we're not gonna deliver you. Here's the solution to, or like just a message that's like, oh, isn't that fucked up?
Yeah, no, and every now and then it like unlike Beyond the Sea, which like keeps throwing us like half a bone, like
Mm.
it just like sort of like sprinkles elements in there, and uh it feels more vibrant for it rather than
Yes.
uh haphazard, and it sometimes they like do connect to the core themes like very directly, and sometimes it's more murky.
Yeah, but I also think like the murkiness of this episode is actually to its credit because
Yes,
it is depicting something real apart
yes,
apart from the very central plot. But it is depicting a real society and showing that like this person who goes through it is going to find a lot of weird issues to deal with, and some of them are interlinked
mm,
more or less, and some of them aren't. Like
yeah.
there is a separation at times.
Yeah. So, shall we get
Shall
to
we?
it?
Yes. So I guess the start of the episode is, for some reason, a very intense scare chord,
Yeah.
as it introduces itself as a red mirror, which, for context, I suppose, is where Charlie Brooker does more fantasy than sci-fi. Apparently,
Yeah.
I've read this up now properly.
Yes, strangely, not the last episode. But sorry, the last episode being
Macy Day, yeah,
Macy Day.
yeah. I suppose that one's kind of like in between. It seems
Yeah.
very confusing, but anyway, yeah, it scare chords us into seeing someone wake up for their job, and I'm like, that makes sense. That's how I feel too. um, but yeah, and it's just this completely ordinary British woman um, going through her morning routine, except she's Indian and it's 1979, so that sucks.
Yeah. Life is bad.
Yeah, but not like the horrific bad, right? Like
No.
this is not an apartheid society. It shows the very mundane badness of being a racial minority.
Yeah. It to cut ahead a bit here. There is an element like sequence later where they say this very outright, as the demon describes the nothingness that he is threatened with, and it's it's without time, without space, it's non-existing, and yet being alone. And she simply says, "That's how I feel."
And I think it's like one of those little details that I didn't think about until later. This woman seems to have no friends or family here.
Yes.
And you can kind of post it as like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder how it got that way. But like the answer is pretty simple, right? Like there isn't a
Yeah.
here's my dark secret. It's she's a South Asian woman in the 70s of Britain, and that sucks. Like I'm
Yeah.
sorry to hear that, girl. Like I wish racism wasn't a thing.
Yeah, when her mother died, and now she's alone working a shit job in a department store, which is more or less the next scene, with a coworker who despises her racistly.
Yeah.
Um,
And a boss who looks down on her, patronizes her racistly.
yes.
It's not despising, but very clearly like
Yeah, no.
gives support to the racist parties and such like that.
Yeah.
But it's but gives it a nice facade of like, could you please be less ethnic? Like,
Yeah, could you please eat normal food? And he, I guess we can do this now, because we're sort of hit with a 1-2 punch here, because in the first sort of what happens here is that her coworker complains to her boss about her eating biryani, and how it stinks up the showroom where she eats. And her coworker's like goes to her boss, complains, and her boss sort of very apologetically is like, "Hey, could you please eat somewhere else or something else?"
Yeah,
And
could you
like,
please eat something that has as much spices as England has produced in the last 2 millennia.
Yeah, and at this point, he is shown to be sort of very apologetic. He's like, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm." Like he feels quite happy when he's like, "Oh, yeah, no, I can like just lend you the basement," and we're not really shown like particular malice on his part, and yet, a, a number of scenes like far deeper into the episode, we are shown that he is straight up, um, supporting a upstart Tory who we know to be evil.
Yeah, and specifically evil in the sense that he's on the right of the Tory party.
Yeah.
That's the implication. But still, like, he is respectable, in quotes.
Yes.
And that's the thing that allows this, like, 50, 60-year-old gentleman who runs the shoe store to be also respectably racist.
Yeah, and we're sort of like left to wonder whether this gentleman knows this is a straight up evil Tory, because we, the audience, are unequivocally told that this man will be Hitler.
Yeah.
But we never get resolution to that. We just got like, oh yeah, no, this is the sort of man who supports this sort of politics. And thereby his sort of like apologetic niceness is blunted, or I guess nuance at the very least.
I think it is nuanced, right? Because, like, I think this is one of those things where the episode very much lets you interpret this in their own way, because there's no indication at any point in this episode that this elderly gentleman is at all actually, like, intentionally biased or thinks of himself as even slightly racist.
Yeah, no.
But very much enables it.
Yes.
In practice. I think also, like, an interesting thing heretofore, we have very much seen our protagonist, Nida, as, I think the right word is meek, as well as apathetic.
Yes. I have later in my notes that the subtitles very frequently describe her vocalizations as whimpering.
Yes. I mean, like, I think there's a very interesting little scene where she sees, like, the National Front, who, honestly, this is an embarrassing thing I should have looked up. Is the National Front, like, the actual thing that England had as a far-right party, or is it just, like, a generic name?
I don't know, because it's the 70s, so it wasn't like Mosley times.
Yeah. But either way, she sees this, like, far-right logo on her front door, and she just kind of, like, sighs and moves on.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't even wipe it off.
Yeah, and she sees, like, the Conservative rally in town, and she also just, like, sort of uncomfortably moves away. Like, there's just, like, an omnipresent, like, oppressiveness to her life.
Yeah, and I think it's also manifested by, like, one of the scenes that comes up here before the plot really gets moving is her being, needing to, I don't know, serve is the wrong word here. She has to attend to a customer who is, just really creepy. You can, like, just very creepy guy.
Extremely.
And also has killed his wife. Like, that's set up front. They said, like, he killed his wife, but he appears to kind of gotten off on a technicality sort of thing.
Yeah, no, presumably he, like, went to prison and got out after, like, some number of years, and now he's back to being a weird guy in the shoe store.
Yeah, and he hits on her, and this is interesting, because, like, this is the one, like, uncomfortable scene that has nothing to do with racism in and of itself.
Yeah.
Which I think is fair. Like, that's one of those things where, like, oh yeah, maybe this guy is extra creepy towards her because she's South Asian and thus has some less social staying power here. But also, maybe he's just this way around women in general. Maybe he's an equal opportunity misogynist.
But we get a bit of a hint on what lies beneath the surface for Nida.
Mm-hmm.
Because she fantasizes about brutally killing this guy. Or at least, like, beating the ever-living shit out of him for creeping on her at work and asking for a number.
And she also gets the same scene in reaction to her racist coworker.
That's right.
And it's interesting because I kind of expected that to be more of a presence in the episode, but it is just these 2 times. But they are, they make an impact, I would say. They are very quick, visceral, to the point. I think it's good It's good writing.
Yeah, no, we very much see that she is, despite the sort of calm, um, differential
Yeah.
surface appearance, I guess, she she's not enjoying herself
Yeah,
at
she
all.
harbors the
She
resentments. She just doesn't.
deeply,
But
massively,
she lives in the society she does. So how is she gonna take it out on anyone?
yeah,
I think it's also like one more thing I want to say before we move on to like where the plot really begins. It's also the establishing fact that like she doesn't. Not only does she not have any like friends or family, she just doesn't seem to have any spark of light in her life. Like she
yeah,
watches what appears to be like B movie sci-fi when she gets home. That's it, right? Like that's the highlight of her day, and she is clearly like just watching it to let the hours tick away.
yeah,
Like there is no sign that this woman has aspirations or things that bring her joy in
yeah,
life at all. And I think that's like a really interesting little detail about her.
yeah. She's at just barely getting by in like the spiritual sense, right?
Yeah,
Undernourished, just sort of getting through the day, kind of.
indeed. But then we have things that begin to kick off.
Yes. Because it is the next day when she eats her food in the basement, and she goes through these newspaper articles, which do a bit of foreshadowing, and cuts her thumb on a drawer, and uh, gets a demon domino out of it.
Yeah, she accidentally bleeds onto this sort of runic talisman carved into a domino piece.
That is out of like sort of cast iron.
Is it?
I think so.
Okay, I thought it was bone.
No, I think it's cast iron and it's quite gnarly.
I see. Okay, I
Yeah.
can see that. It's just like there's a later line where the demon says blood and bone were bonded or something like that. But detail,
Yeah.
probably fair to move on. And she's like, oh, that's funky, and she just kind of grabs this runic thing, which like I'm with it. Like I'm also a magpie. I completely support her decision making here.
Yeah, it looked
Um,
cool as shit.
yeah, it did look cool as shit.
There's blood on it.
Yeah, I do always like wonder, like, cause I am noticing a lot of protagonists in media do seem to have a tendency to just kind of grab stuff, and I'm like, I'm happy for the magpie
Yeah. No,
representation.
I've played video games before. I
Yeah,
understand the sentiment. Nothing happens. We cut through the evening, and she hears the voice of our deuteragonist Gop.
yeah, and a very interesting voice because he's kind of like, well, how would you characterize him? Because I was going to use the word pathetic, but I don't think that's actually true. He's just like he doesn't have much presence to start with. He's just like, please let me out of this room, my dude, please,
Yeah, no,
please.
he is very much a hell customer service guy. I'm feeling right. I think like the energy he brings to it is more or less like someone who works in like customer service, someone who works in like what's the word?
Like just the service industry, like
Yeah, just like a service industry guy, right?
because I think the vibe he gives off right is like he's gonna ask for help, he's gonna negotiate, but you can hear the like, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm annoyed. This is a basic annoying thing about daily life. The
Yeah,
vibe
no,
that he has back.
he's an unskilled telemarketer in some ways, and he just sort of like fast talks in a very literal sense.
He nags.
Yeah, just like, hey, say yes, I'll go away. Just let me summon myself into the world, and nothing else will happen. And this is a lie. A big demon shows up in
Yeah,
her living room, and after she uh, shows the appropriate response, which is dread and curling up, he turns into the singer of Boney M.
uh, yeah, as we all wish demons would.
Please.
It's a real impact. Like it's great.
Yeah. Well, he has like the whitest teeth.
Oh, he does. It's actually terrifying.
Yeah, it's a good visual. And he conveys the plot that she has to kill 3 people before Mayday. And otherwise the world will burn. And we get our first non-fantasy, or rather non-Nidus fantasy sort of unreal scene.
Yeah, when she sees the world burning, like there's,
Yeah.
it's very straightforward to the point. I think it's a strange scene in a way because like he's very much, here's the plot. Like it's just, I'm not giving you any reasoning. I'm not giving you like any context. You have to kill 3 people, one a day before Mayday, or the world burns. Done. Like
Yeah.
and then he goes, let me show you, and she sees the world burning. And then the scene just kind of goes for a bit,
Yeah.
with Shara freaking out, which, like, it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, totally fair. Simultaneously, I think this scene could have been shorter. Like, it feels a bit dragged out, but I don't know if it contributes that much in the long run for it to be so slow for her to.
I think it conveys something about his alienness. That he's just very bothered by the fact that she is not, like, getting with the program immediately. Um,
I mean, like, I think there's something to be said about her, like, despair. Like, at first, full denial, and then just, like, I really hope this isn't real, essentially.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is like a good scene overall. Could have been shorter, is my thought on it. But
Yeah.
it's not that bad. Like we've seen way worse.
One thing that, like, it doesn't have much bearing, but it is fascinating to me enough that I want to flag it, is that we're never told what she's getting out of this. Right? Because presumably, like, you would do like the demon sacrifice thing, not by accident, and be like, hey, I want cool shit for this. But this is never even touched upon.
I think there's an interesting thing, right? Because like, so how I interpreted it was that she finds this talisman among newspaper clippings showing previous deaths, a very successful May Day parade, and in the belongings of this guy who seems to have founded the store she works in.
Yeah.
So there's probably something in there, but I wonder, and this is starting to get a bit too interpretive maybe. I wonder if maybe that guy did the demon summoning to get success in economics, if you will.
Yeah.
But for her, that's not necessary to motivate this. Like, because she has a fundamentally different psychology. Like, she fantasizes about this violence, but would never do anything, right? Like, she's meek to the point that she wouldn't say, like, she wouldn't object to people just doing a racist matter. In fact, she doesn't multiple times.
Yeah, I wouldn't categorize that as meekness, though. I do think that sort of misapprehends the thing.
Yeah, I think it makes sense when you live in that society, but like...
Yeah. It is, like, there is something about her, like, her sort of general lack of aspiration, which I do think that's not something we can, like, properly chastise, because it's...
No, I think that's fair. I guess what I'm trying to get to is I wonder if God, the demon, is like, I don't need to motivate this woman with, like, financial success or whatever, because, like, that's not what she's suffering from at the core. Like, yeah, she's lower class, that's clearly impacts her life, but maybe the violence in and of itself and getting back at the people who oppress her is enough of a reward in and of itself.
I mean, I think that's, like, one of the ideas the episode puts out there, but it doesn't, because, like it sets it up, right, with, like, two, like, violent fantasies, but it discards it, like, more or less entirely, or, well, almost. I guess we'll get to that later. But yeah, no, I think this is a bit of a red herring, and I do think the episode fundamentally isn't that interested in it, right?
No, it's more like trying to make sense of a background detail.
Yeah, no, and honestly, I don't think they care super much, and because it's not relevant, and the fact that it isn't is just quite funny to me.
No, I think that's fair, but anyway, where we were, we see her essentially having a panic attack. I think like quite impressively acted, honestly. Like that's a bit too close to home. And then she runs off to a canal, and she continues having a bit of like she's starting to calm down a bit, but still being like, "Please get this demon away from me." And she meets this man.
Yeah.
And you at the very start of this, I think there's an interesting sort of like because I kind of read this as a red herring too, where like okay, it's like late at night, woman who's alone, meets a man, and we kind of see him like blurrily at first, in the back of the camera, shaded. So I'm already like, okay, this is obviously a bad situation for a woman to be in. This could be the first kill. But he actually shows himself to be fairly helpful. Like, he seems genuinely concerned for her.
Yeah, he's polite. He's, hey, are you having a problem? Please put the brick down.
Yeah.
Normal things to say in this situation. However, we experience another of Gob's powers, because he doesn't just have the ability to show you bad futures. He also has the ability to peer into people's souls. Generally speaking, he just sort of has the tap on cosmic information, and we find out that this man is a pedophile who abuses his daughter, and sort of in a like brief flash of rage, sort of coming out of that vision, she just clocks him in the head, and he falls in the canals dead as a log.
Yeah, it's very impactful. Like, 'cause I was expecting more build up, and it kind of just comes. Like, we just get this one camera shot of her bringing up the brick, whacking him properly, and he just topples over quickly into the canal.
Yeah, and this sets us up for probably the part of the episode that I'm most uncertain about, and that I find like the most interesting because of that. Because this gets the coppers on the case.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically a duo of a very nice young lady who looks like a bit younger than I guess you'd expect. And she's just sort of got like she's got like a sort of she's got like urchin energy a little bit.
I can see what you mean, yeah.
And she's like I guess a strange duo with like a old sort of world-weary police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks him into looking into this death, even though initially he's like, it's probably nothing. But she's like, no, the dog came out, and he's like, all right, we're going to look into this. And you sort of like get a glimpse of like I guess another possible viewpoint that the story could have been told from, right? Because like they're basically just tracking down, or just sort of barreling down on these murders.
Yeah, we just essentially get like a slight review of what happens after our protagonist Nina does these things.
Yeah.
Like there isn't much new stuff, just another perspective on the same things.
Yes. But also another element of society. Because like this is like the most that authority is represented in one way.
Yeah, like concrete manifested authority, right?
Yes.
It's like obviously there's a lot of other people here who have pretty much everyone she meets has superior social power to her.
Yeah.
Like her boss, her co-worker who's white, like the politician who's racist.
Yeah.
We're gonna say the word racist a lot in this episode.
Yeah, no, this episode is about racism.
Yeah, so I think that's fair. But yeah, like it is interesting because like we actually get I would say quite a sympathetic view of like this case of hard power.
Yeah.
But that's a bit further on, I would say.
Yes.
Put a pin in that.
But yeah, no, the next morning she's panicking, but she's at least talked by the demon into going to work to keep up her cover. And, she looks like shit, she feels like shit. But she does it, she goes. What happens then?
I mean, I think it's mostly like she is, in a weird way, kind of tormented at work by the demon going, you should kill that person, you should kill that person. And I think very interestingly, like, offers some very diverse reasons. There are some that's like, he beats his wife, like, she's horrible, like, she steals from the till. This woman is old.
And wants to die.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, wow, okay, that's a switch in tactic. But
yeah, no, he's just firing on all cylinders. like, and this is again where we see like a full sort of telemarketer vibe, because he's just like, yeah, no, I have a different thing to sell me every time you rebut me. But she doesn't seem too inclined, and
No, because she has murdered someone, like
yeah,
very very directly, very with a great deal of weight on her hands, you
yeah,
might say. And she is disgusted by it, right? Like she
yeah,
wants out. She's not going to do it to anyone, no matter how horrific they are.
yeah,
And I think this is like an interesting scene in a way because both the way God like tries to justify his murders, and some of them I think plenty of people are going to go, yeah, that's fair. And then also the like little bit of a twist was the woman who's just like, yeah, no, the only reason I have to find that you should kill this woman is because she wants it. She's not a bad person, at least not
yeah.
that he provides. She just wants to die.
But we don't meet our victim for the night in the scene, and there's like sort of an interstitial where she almost calls the police, but he gets through to her, and it's like, no, the world will burn. I've shown you the world
Yeah.
burning.
Billions will die
Kills
unless you kill.
just and this reminds me of a beautiful line from earlier, just before the first kill, where he's like, yeah, no, more people fall off ladders, you will be less deadly than ladders.
Which I think is a fundamental statistical misuse, because, yeah, she might be less lethal than all ladders in the world, but not a single ladder. You're not doing math correctly here. You have to take people killed by ladders divided by number of ladders. And I think she probably tops it.
Well, but no. Eventually, she is persuaded that billions will die is probably a good enough reason to kill someone.
Yeah.
So
because I want to say something. She very much here buys into the let's find a bad person to kill.
Yeah.
Like she is on board with this.
Well,
Mostly.
sort of.
Like
right?
she doesn't want to kill, but
yeah.
Once she's convinced, okay, we have to kill to prevent the world ending, she goes, yeah, let's find a really bad person.
Well, there's a step that you're skipping here, which is
Mm-hmm.
that he's like, you're not ready for killing yet, drink some booze. And then sort of while she's drinking in the bar and acting very suspicious in general, he's sort of commenting like, this one, and we get the same spiel again. But
I think the first one he points out is like a petty thief.
Yeah.
That's his crime. And like, I think this is something where like we start building a little bit on this idea of like who is bad enough to kill.
Yeah.
Because once you get down to it, like this guy, he steals from the elderly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a contextless look into this person's life, as have all of these other things been. But I think, once we start with this guy is a pedophile and this guy killed his wife, those are pretty heavy things. But, this guy, like, we're starting to negotiate our way a bit down this ladder.
But we get to our bachelor for the night.
Yeah, guy who killed his wife.
Guy who killed his wife. His name is Keith, and with him she has had, I think, the personal creepy experience with him earlier on makes her go like, all right, I guess it's this one.
Yeah.
And he did kill his wife, and we have some awkward eye contact over people drinking booze. She follows him outside where he's pissing. He thinks she's coming on to him. Well, she fumbles. Yeah, there's an ongoing bit where she is too slow getting the hammer out of her bag to strike him down.
Yeah.
And by just sort of being too slow every time, she follows him to his house, into his kitchen, into his living room, then into his bedroom.
Yeah.
Until finally, he thinks they're about to have sex.
Yeah.
And
might I add, for a guy who killed his wife, remarkably respectful.
Yeah, no, he's like, yeah, no, I think he like goes off to wash his dick at some point. He lives in complete filth.
Yeah, it's terrible. But like he tries to be like, oh yeah, don't look at all of this stuff. Just shoves it under the bed.
Yeah,
Like
and
it's he comes off remarkably meek, I would say.
extremely. And it sort of culminates because like she doesn't get the drop on him.
Mhm.
He just sees her with a hammer. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
you're gonna hit me with that.
and she goes, yeah,
And he sits down, takes off his glasses, and he's like, I guess I knew this was coming. And we get a little bit of like guilt, and then we sort of get him starting to reason. It's like, well, I knew it. I had these dreams. I knew this was coming. And then he starts to sort of like justify a bit more. He's like, I guess I did love her. I think, and that's when she clocks him, and she really goes for it.
yeah.
Like
This
she,
one is quite brutal,
yeah,
and I think this is really interesting because I do not see what he's sitting down to say as him justifying it. Actually, I think that this is his like I'm about to die. Like this is his life flashing before his eyes, reflecting on his greatest crime.
hmm,
And I think this is open for interpretation.
yeah,
But like he doesn't, to me at least, he doesn't come off as justifying. He sits down, waits for her to kill him. Like I feel
yeah,
like if he was trying to get out of the situation, there are ways. Like at least he could have,
hmm,
he's like a somewhat elderly, portly man. Like it wouldn't have been easy, but like
yeah,
he takes his eyes off of her and just starts talking about how sad he is about what he did.
yeah. I do think I think I'm reading it as like self-justification, right? This is sort
Maybe,
of what he
yeah.
tells himself, and we're never left to like uh really figure out whether he. Well, I guess we do kind of because at some point later, God goes, "Oh yeah, no, he didn't intend to. It was a spur of the moment murder." So like in that way, I guess we do have a little bit in his favor, maybe.
I disagree with that being in
Yeah,
his
no,
favor, but like I think this is one of those things where I genuinely have to like praise the episode a bit because
yeah,
this is a moment. It's very easy to do this like thing where you're like, oh, we want to write something morally gray, so we say this guy's done something really bad, and then a little bit later we get the opposite story where he's like, no, he's totally fine. But that's not it. That's not what's happening
yeah,
here. We are getting like an actually somewhat gray situation where he's like,
yeah,
he did kill his wife. No one disagrees on this,
yeah. He
but
he went to prison, we think.
yeah,
Um,
but he is not just a remorseless killer and a creep.
no, like he doesn't seem like fully repentant, but he
No.
like he's like he clearly has no like sort of like spree of bloodlust.
Yeah, and like we do get the other side of the story,
Yeah,
but it doesn't redeem him.
no,
And I think that's like a really like impressive use of restraint. Because I think here, if we go into Black Mirror's addiction to twists, this could have been where it goes, oh no, she actually tried to kill me. I was just defending myself, or blah blah. And then you're like,
yeah,
oh, what a twist. We didn't see that coming.
but no. The twist is like, and I wrote this. I wrote this note earlier because I was thinking like, like we're going after the guy who's killed his wife. So, well, like, he's done his time, right? He's pathetic and like creepy, but like, is the episode just telling us like, oh yeah, no, this one's a freebie. This one deserves to die, and well, it's that's sort of like what Nita is being lured with, right? It's
Yeah.
like a morally justified killing. Um, but where it actually goes is like it sort of resolves that by going like, well, he thinks so. Like
Yeah, he agrees.
he's ready to die, and that doesn't actually answer the question, does
Yeah,
it?
what do you do when the remorseless killer sits down and says, "You're right, I should probably die. Please bash my brains in."
Yeah,
That's like a situation I don't think we morally are really expecting.
no, but yeah, that's how like we think her second kill is going to resolve. But then she's about to leave the building sort of with the murder weapon and so on. And his brother comes home And she's almost in the clear, and then the floorboard creaks, and we get a very awkward fight scene.
Yeah.
Because, first she's like, I'm just going to leave anyway, but the demon is like, no, that's a witness, baby.
Yeah.
And I think we're sort of being like fast talked through this one, and maybe so is she, to be honest. Because like she doesn't like kill this man through the cart of her convictions or anything. Like she scrambles into a situation where he feels like threatened to death.
Very justifiably, by the way.
Yeah, fully. Like she's there's a lady talking to herself. It's just like, I guess I have to kill him, or like talking to an invisible presence. Like he scrambles for a knife. They scramble against each other. There's like this sort of flat slap fight sequence before they like really get to it, where like neither of them seems to have any stomach for violence. And then eventually, like after they've scrambled on the floor, like he's coming at her very justifiably with the hammer, and she like gets him with the knife beforehand. And the clock strikes midnight. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also like notable that in the previous scenes, we've seen her react with some degree of like guilt, but this killing the wife murderer's brother, is where she actually speaks to him and says like, I'm sorry, I'm really, really sorry.
Yeah.
And like, there's not a huge amount that comes of that, but I think it's like an interesting detail compared to like, vomiting with guilt and everything, but not to the person, right?
Yeah.
Like, because I think even killing the wife murderer, she's quite starting to become a bit more remorseless, right? Like she hesitates, but it seems less morally inclined compared to the first kill.
Yeah.
But yeah, then she heads home, and the demon, Gop, is very happy. He's like, hell yeah, we've done it in record time.
Yeah.
Oh wait, there's still apparently one more, let me call hell tech support.
Yeah, no, and they could have done this very stupidly, which is like, you have to do one a day actually. But no, they're like, this is where they introduce another mechanic of the plot, that you can't kill murderers. So the previous element of like, let's go after someone who deserves it is complicated. Because first of all, we find out that the only reason the world didn't end is because she accidentally got the brother.
Yeah.
And the second thing we find out is that murders don't count. The murder of the previous day did not count. And so she like, the easy out of like, I guess I'll find another murderer to kill. None is actually set up or anything. Like, is sort of removed from the table.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting because this forces like a moral non-equivalency, right? Because I think she does actually say like, what about that pedophile? Like, according to you, her daughter kills herself due to the shame when she's 28. And he goes, yeah, but that's in the future. And like, I mean, you could have also made the point here, right, where he goes, no, yeah, but she kills herself, so it's not quite the same thing. But like, because I think this is where it gets really interesting, right? Like, because it goes into the, like killing a killer. At some point, you start feeling like, okay, that's like, I mean, this is a very deep moral topic in and of itself. But removing that ability to just be like a life for a life, and instead be a life for someone who is really abusive or beats his wife or stuff like that, that's where you actually do get into a bit more interesting stuff.
Yeah, no, and I do want to flag here that, like, we did get here in a weird way, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, that's not where we started either. Because the episode does a very British thing in a way. And it's like, the part where it like starts to get more morally gray is when we get to the murderer, because of course the pedophile is free game. Just, that one's never treated as remotely morally gray. And like, we even like get a later scene where it's just like, she'll need therapy, but she'll live. She left children.
I think there's more to it than that. Because I feel like when Nita kills the pedophile, there aren't any like triumphant moments there.
No.
Like, we see less of him as like we see him as polite and like trying to help her, but we don't get like the sob story, I suppose, that like the wife murder begins to tell. But simultaneously, like, I don't know, I don't entirely buy that the episode says it's fine to kill the pedophile. I think that is a point of view that some characters in the story do support. Like the demon Gop is very
Yeah.
much like, yeah, no, this is great for her. Like she gets to have a child when she's 29 and like a grandchild when she's 57 or something like that. But that's him, and he is very bloodlusting. I think there's something
Yeah,
to be said about doubting his opinion on things.
yeah, no, I think like and I'm not certain I stand by this, but I think like the way it is deployed is like to sort of like rush it past the audience and like not have her like risen to like great levels of like murderous yet, because like it's like extremely quick. It's like completely in affect,
Yeah,
and
it is an impulse that
yeah,
just
and
goes.
it is a pedophile. So, and I think all of these things are deployed to make the killing seem like less morally weighty, um, to like let it like start a bit slower, right? Like start the moral questionability and like not immediately at 10, because like it feels like that's, or like the episode is sort of hinting that that's where we're going, right? That's sort of her like casting her morals more and more aside, because like by the end of the second night she has killed a regular type guy,
Yeah.
But again in affect, so we're removing like one of the pieces, right?
Well, like that's an interesting thing, right? Because it's not really affect in that sense. Like
no, but like in the heat of the moment, right? At that point it was kill or be killed. Just how she got there. Yeah.
I think there is something interesting to be said about the first kill being in righteous anger, and the second kill in affect is fear, like self-preservation. But self-preservation for having done something that you can at least discuss already puts her in a bad situation.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting then too, because she goes on to say, "Hey Gop, please tell me this other guy I just killed was shitty in some way." Like she doesn't say it outright, but she says, she kind of implies like, "Please tell me he's also terrible." And he goes, "No, he's just a normal guy."
Yeah, ordinary is the word they use.
Which I think is an interesting moral judgment in and of itself, to say that someone is ordinary.
Yeah.
But also, like, you could kind of call it into question, right? He's living with a wife murderer who's his brother, but I think there's something like interesting to analyze there at the very least.
I do think that I personally read that as giving him a bit more compassion, honestly, because you know he's helping out his extremely down on his luck brother.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like so we're like increasing the temperature more and more, and at this point, like the thing that's adding to that is even more is that we get the like hard no on murderers.
Yeah.
Right. So now we get the question: how do we resolve this moral problem of someone's got to die or everyone dies? And next day at the shop, who stops by?
Nigel, not Nigel Farage, sorry. Unnamed Tory. Wait, no, his name. Michael Smart, I think.
Michael Smart, I think. Yeah, and I gotta give credit to this actor. Like he delivers a lot of characterization quite concisely and quickly. Like he has an earlier scene where he sort of like does vague like bombast in his campaigning, but we get Nita overhearing we get her overhearing like this guy conversing with her awful coworker.
Yeah.
And
I think it's parts she overhears is mostly the parts where he goes like, you know, like this country is really going downhill, like our neighborhoods are getting worse. Like it's a lot of the very like, and I'll admit I'm not as knowledgeable about British stuff, so I'm giving the comparison to like sort of Reaganite, like toying with race as the reason you are scared, right?
Yeah.
There's crime on the streets. There's
and like the co-workers, like my sister lives in, I want to say Chatham.
Yeah, Chatham.
Chatham or something. and she doesn't say like a slur, but she's like, oh yeah, no, like two of those moved in next to her, and we find out that the coworker's actually like hard right. She was going to vote National Front, but the Tory convinces her, right? And the line,
I think it's a very interesting way to convince someone, right? Because he's not like he goes on that I'm electable, but also he's very much like, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, and like this is like probably the most like eerie scene in the episode, because like the words he chooses are to like this like person who's going to vote for the hard right is like to convince her to vote for him instead is, you know what I stand for.
Yeah, it's like it really strikes me as the death of a euphemism thing, right? Like he is toying with like just saying, yes, I am using euphemisms when I say that your neighborhoods are going downhill.
Yeah.
I'm using a euphemism when I'm talking about those people.
Yeah.
Like, or criminals or whatever. It is a very upfront statement, and I think it's so fair, right? Like it's just a good scene.
Yeah, and like it's very interesting because like it leaves a lot of space, right? Because like he is like a right Tory, but we know who he is only by virtue of him saying, you know who I am, right? You know what I stand for conveys what he stands for, quite ironically, because until then we're like, oh, maybe he's waffling, maybe he's something else, but no, like he's saying this to convince someone.
I think it also says something that like the two people he's around who can hear him do this is someone who is like a hard right winger and an Indian woman.
Yeah.
Like there is one person there who could vote for him and one person who will never will. I think it like because the danger to his position, right, are the white middle class who wants to still appear respectable. He can't say that shit to them. Yeah. But to immigrants and to people who hate immigrants, all forward.
Yes, and like in case we weren't entirely clear, the episode really doubles down here because sure it leverages like a lot of cinematic language to be like, oh yeah, no, this guy is sinister as shit.
Yeah.
At this point, we have Nita basically blackmailing Gop into telling her, or into showing her where this guy is going in future, and
that's British Hitler.
Yeah, no, he like we get like a sequence where he gets like progressively grayer, and like the Britain logos, the party logos get increasingly more fascist.
Yeah, and I think also like just the vision itself becomes a bit more monochrome over time. Like it is proper. Like he's gonna create some sort of like continental war. And...
Yeah, like we don't know that actually. I think the implication is just that he's going to like sink boats with immigrants on them.
Okay, maybe, yeah. Like it's hard to tell. But the point is, he's really bad.
He's on that ethno state shit.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because it starts with like him getting elected, and then the second vision scene is him getting thrown out of the Tories for being too racist, and I'm like, that's an interesting twist, but sure, like that's a little interesting detail of like, oh yeah, he actually was going like he was weighing a bit too far on the right for them. But that's hard to be.
Yeah, but yeah, we and at this point we see Nita who is like, oh, this is my ethical out.
Yeah.
Right, this is the solution to the problem of I need to kill someone else. Because this man, even though he killed his dog and beats his wife, I think, has not killed a human being yet. We're left entirely unclear.
And he
like
will cause deaths, but I don't think it's specifically said that he will kill people in that sense.
I guess they just don't want to disentangle that one.
Yeah,
really.
And I think Goth here is like, please don't kill him. Hell loves this dude.
Yeah, no, he like batting for the home team he uses in another context, and it very much applies here. Like this. He is a force for evil, but Nita sees, oh, I can kill this man and fulfill my bargain.
I think it's interesting too, because now we have two situations where like Nita has the utilitarian like trolley problem, right?
Yeah.
There's the kill anyone, prevent the apocalypse, and kill this specific guy and prevent
British ethnicity.
Brittler. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about it earlier, and I was like, I really need to swing this conversation back around so I can drop Brittler.
Yeah. No. And at this point, the cops are getting on to her. She goes home, sort of plans the murder because she knows where he's going.
And now she's dedicated. Now she's like,
she is. Yeah, she gets a cool jacket. She's playing cool music. Like, the episode is like, hell yeah, girl buzz time. Anti-fascism is here, and the police interview her, and she sort of like lies, and like she lies quite fluently, right?
Yeah, I think she could have done better, but she does quite well.
Yeah, no, and I think this is like one of the points where it is conveyed to us that she is in now, because at any earlier point she would have immediately broken.
Yeah.
But now she's in. She's going to fucking murder this man.
I think it's also important to mention that specifically the police who is interviewing her is the like older, portly, white gentleman.
Yes, who is like sort of a resigned but kind presence. And like he is nothing but pleasant to her, right?
Yeah.
Like we at no point in the entire episode will we ever get any bad vibes from this guy. Or his like sort of like odd couple teammate, the young cop. And we find out from Gop that he didn't fucking buy it. He's going to be following her.
Yeah.
And we basically go to the campaign rally. He's leaving. Nita follows him, gets rid of the cop by sheer luck, drives him off the road, and
starts hammering. I think it's really good that like it's established she's a hammerer, she's a basher.
Yeah.
she has her own serial killer class, and it's the hammer.
Yes. But the cop catches up and talks her down, right?
Yeah, like I think I was really there's something he said, right, where it's like, this is wrong.
Yeah.
You just know this is wrong, like, because he's not even engaging, because she's saying something along like, I have to kill him or there's going to be war.
Yeah, and we have this like very interesting contrast, because like before he arrives, like she is in the zone, she's going to fucking end this man. And I didn't remember this quite so vividly from the first time viewing this, but like she is going to like bash his brains in without compunction.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised, because I thought this was like maybe when she's standing, because she kind of hopes that the crash alone will kill him, but it doesn't, and she's go, oh shit. And then I was like, okay, maybe now that she's facing him down with the hammer in hand, blood on it, that's when she's gonna start.
She is bashing.
She's
committed. The moment when she hesitates is only when like the third party enters, and he is like, this isn't you, this isn't right. And like she just crashes into that and just loses all conviction.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think this is a scene that I was like genuinely very impressed by, because like I think also she goes like that, like I have to kill him or there's like a lot of bad stuff's gonna happen, and the cop goes, we'll deal with that then, but right now don't kill this person, because that's where we're at.
And he talks her down successfully, and she kind of breaks down crying.
Yeah.
Still with like a little bit of bloodlust in her, but like not enough at all to like kill. Like she sort of like is like but like she is like diffused as soon as he like starts speaking to her like a person. And we basically cut ahead to the interrogation room.
Yeah, I think also like what we should note here, right, is that speaking to her as a person, because this is the second of two people who's done that in the entire episode. It's him, the police officer, and the demon, right?
Yeah.
Essentially. But yeah, she's in an interrogation room. She's explaining it in a way that really makes it sound like someone who's having a psychotic episode, because, I mean, fair enough, right? Like, I think this is just one of those things where, like,
because only she can see the demon.
yeah, like there's nothing here to prevent.
Yeah, and like the dominoes are normal and everything.
Yeah, and like it's notable too that the apocalypse is not coming for some supernatural means, right? Like it is a nuclear war that's gonna happen, and we've been getting hints that it's heating up.
Yeah, no, and like this is I forgot to flag this earlier, but this is actually done in a very interesting way because they're like, oh yeah, no, we're gonna drop hints at this, like every now and then, like someone changes the channel, and it's like, oh yeah, no, tensions are heating up in the Cold War, but at some point, like, this is like Gops like stops and it's like, this is the apocalypse that's coming, right?
Yeah,
like it is flagged.
I did feel like that was maybe like a bit of a weakness. Like I think it was kind of a yeah, we know, but fair enough, like I guess pointing it out to her is also like, I suppose like if you live in the Cold War, the nuclear war has been coming for the last 30 years, so fair enough that like you need like a no, but this is the real one.
Yeah, no, and I do think there is like a strength to just like outright saying like, no, this is the thing, because yeah, no, I think there's quite I think it's a bit trite at this point to just like be like, oh yeah, no, you should have paid more attention to the news broadcasts in the background. Like, no, this is foregrounded, and we know that it is according to God what will happen, but it doesn't. Right? Like the clock strikes 12 after he has given her sort of profuse apologetic explanation, and nothing happens.
Yeah, she's sitting there, like the two police officers walk out, they say, I mean, she's lost it, right? Like, that's very obviously what's happened. I mean, now we've even got the midnight clock hitting, and the apocalypse doesn't come, and then the sirens turn on, and then the apocalypse comes.
Yeah, and while they sort of like walk slowly towards like the big window to just really cinematically watch like 3 nuclear warheads explode before like the blast gets them. We come back to Anita, and Gab appears in the interrogation room, and we get the final twist.
Yeah, because he sits there and he basically says, yeah, I got fired. I'm going into the super hell as per supernatural.
He's going into the void, into oblivion.
Yeah.
But he's looked at the small print and he can just take her with him.
Which is interesting, right? Like that's a strange little thing to drop as a loophole at the end.
Yeah, and we get like this very nice exchange where it's like, the void, nothingness, is that what you're offering me? And he quips, it's worse, it's nothingness with me. And like this is sort of like when we sort of like get rushed back into the realization that the reason she chose the singer is because that's who she finds hot. And she's like, all right, I guess we're going there because the world is ending, and a hot demon boy asked me out. And they walk down the corridor as the world melts in the background, with like the police having completely been exploded, and we get beautiful music to play us out.
Yeah, I think the immediate thing that strikes me on this retelling is that we see no destruction.
No.
The thing we saw earlier was like her entire town on fire, including her like personal apartment, her flat, if you will. And here we just see the bright light envelop everything going away, compared, I want to say, to the brutality of her killings, right? Like hammering, the bashing, the guts.
Though we do know that there is someone standing there who, by the time the fire reaches them in slow motion, has been eviscerated. Because we know the layout of the building and the people who were watching. So like it is present, but it's not shown.
No, and it's an almost like, in a way, I think, angelic glow that overtakes her.
Like it's rupture, right?
Yeah, and there we are. I think it's very easy. I think if someone said, what if we made the nuclear apocalypse look like a good ending, for people to be like, shut up, you pretentious twat. But I think it actually goes pretty well. But it's not like it's hard to call it bittersweet because I think it's actually weirdly upbeat. I think it is very sweet,
Yeah,
but it is complicated, right? Like it is morally complicated to say what happened here.
yeah, and like I guess what is like very like textually happening that is like she is getting a good end, um, while the world isn't, and like she apologizes for not like being able to kill the bad guy and save the world and save God from oblivion. Um, like we never get told if she would have like just been caught hammer in hand or whatever, like how that would have gone out. No,
Yeah.
we're just like left with, um, I guess I don't know. I think there is definitely a strong reading of this episode of like turn away from the evils of the world and turn inward and find tranquility.
Yeah, I think like this is kind of what I was thinking about, like that this is a story about judgment in systems. Like you are stuck in a system, you have the opportunity to judge people on it. But at some point, that's gonna get real fuzzy, right? Like God
Mm,
offers these insights into, yeah, this guy beats his wife, this guy steals, like, but he gives those little insights. And like, sure, if someone beats their wife, I'm not gonna say there's a lot of good justification for
mm,
that, but a human's life is a bit more complicated than just the worst thing they've ever done.
yeah,
And that's not something God wants to show. He wants to
no,
show these are the horrors of these people,
yeah,
and the system that they live in is not contextualized, right? She lives in the system, they do as well,
yeah,
and she uses him and like buys into his idea of let's judge these people based on the worst things that they've ever done.
yeah. And one thing that's interesting, right, is that he is more or less implicitly shown to be unable to give false visions.
Yeah,
And like he is also entirely forthright the entire time, except for the very beginning. Like
he
his
lies once, and
yes,
and then he's hesitant to show the truth, but he does.
yes, but like what he does is editorialize
Yeah,
heavily, one might add. And yeah, it's a very tense relationship to the truth. But he is not full of falsehoods. We are never given any reason to believe that.
yeah. Like I mean, I started it and I was a bit like, this guy could just be lying. He's literally admitted to being a demon. He
Yeah.
could just have made the pedophile thing up,
Mm.
but that's dismissed, right? Like,
Yeah.
'cause she asks that you could just be making this up, and he's like, nah, like, and
Yeah, and like we get like other people like in confirmation of this.
yeah, there's never a point where it seems like the things he's predicting are not true, right? Like
Yeah.
it seems correct. So I buy that. Like
Yeah,
I don't think
fully.
there's anything to really discuss there. But I think it's really interesting, right? Because and I was thinking this about the episode, right? Like she's stuck in a system where she has to be meek but fantasizes about killing people,
Mm.
and Gop is stuck in his own system. Like I think that the technical support
Mm.
call is funny, right? Like I think
Yeah.
it's a good bit, but it also says something, right? That he's had her kill someone and have that not count on a technicality,
Yeah.
essentially. And it's like, huh, that's interesting.
And like to like complex like what's really funky is that like he is caught out by this too, right? Like he's like, oh hell yeah, we've done it. Like we've crossed the finish line, and then he gets told from his bosses like, no, no, that one didn't count. Like he is also caught out by the technicality, right?
Yeah.
Like they're closer to each other than they are to their respective systems.
And that's where it goes, right? Because like I think if you are taking this episode as like a full-on message, essentially what this eventually goes to is all of these systems are inherently fucked up for
Yeah.
various reasons, including the system they built together where they go, we should just kill people who deserve it, and
Yeah.
then, we can examine the deserve it a bit closer, but fundamentally the system they've accepted. And then they go, you know what? All of this sucks.
Yeah.
Let the system burn. Like, this is not worth giving ourselves bit by bit into this. Like, we should not give up these little victories to the system that will just keep happening forever. Instead, we're just going to accept that it's going to burn down.
Yeah, no, and I think the cop is probably like the prism to like get a grasp on this episode.
Because he causes the apocalypse in a
Yeah.
sense, yeah?
Yeah, no, but like he is like the odd couple cops are like the most like unequivocally like nice, good people.
Yeah, deontologically good and pleasant, right?
Pleasant, good, empathetic, kind. Like, you know, we get like a sense that there's like a bit of jadedness in there because they're like, he's like, we probably shouldn't investigate this yet because he's probably just like a drunk. But like, and you know, I think there's like some sort of undertone of like, constrained resources. But like, no, they like, you know, they stick to the beat. They like track down the murderer, and like he like presumably does like overtime to get this. And we're told at some point by God that he doesn't have anyone, but like he's basically like sacrificed like personal lives for like what we're given, we have to infer as being like unequivocally like justice.
Yeah, and if you even they meditate a little bit on that after she's been caught, where they like, yeah, we feel sympathetic for her even.
Yeah.
Like, even after finding this genuine serial killer, there's sympathy, there's empathy, but also like he commits to like, she has still killed people. We have to do this.
Yeah, and like, you know, from the normal perspective, he's of course completely right.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what makes him so interesting, because if you to take a step back, I recall I think this was something about sort of belongs in the context of like both Nazis but also like the occupation of Ireland. And one comment that I recall from this is that good cops, like genuinely like good people who are cops, are still are serving the system in a very particular manner, because them being part of the system makes it so that the people who are against the system can't just be like, oh yeah, no, we'll fight, we'll only kill cops or whatever, we'll only kill like the evil occupiers, because by them being both like genuinely like pleasant, nice, good people, but also being part of the system, they make it so that only people who have like not just the will to like kill the evil occupiers, but to accept like, if someone else is on their team, we have to also kill those, which like in this line of reasoning like drastically shrinks the pool of people who are willing to do resistance. And like, so say if the IRA is like, well, occupation cop, no matter how nice, get him. And we sort of get a parallel to this, because when he stops her, right, he is stopping like something that we are like by and large communicated is like a righteous thing, right? She is getting one over on hell. She has outwitted hell itself. But like the good guy, the righteous cop is like, you can't do this. This is wrong, and thereby interposes himself. And like, we're like at least given some grounds to believe that she could like clobber him a bit and then like finish the job.
He's unarmed, like, because that he doesn't come out with a gun. He just goes, "Don't do this, like, it's wrong," and has seemingly complete conviction that will work.
And it does, and because like he is that good cop, and she is not one of the people who are not just willing to kill evil people, but also people who stand between them and killing evil people. Like, she is of like that middle group who is like, well, I'll only do it if they're like if I have like cosmic certainty that I'm killing Brittler. But she's not willing to kill like one nice man who is, because like who has that in them?
I think it also says something that like she has been driven to this point, right?
Yeah.
Like even her kill of the pedophile is in a state of panic and a
Yeah.
state of sudden wrath. So like she has been broken down to this point
Yeah.
where she is willing to kill bad people. Like, because I think this is something where you could make that this is a much more personal story about like how
Yeah.
much of yourself are you willing to give to the cause.
Yeah, and like sort of conversely, like we see her like being amped up more and more, like the temperature rises and she's like getting more and more ready to
Yeah, the
kill.
music is more and more bombastic and energetic.
Yeah, and like she gets the cool jacket,
She
and
gets
like
a cool
this,
jacket.
it's like her arc through the entire episode, right? She like becomes more and more willing to do drastic things, and then she runs into like a genuine person, and the arc just shatters. She's
Yeah.
just her conviction completely crumbles at this.
She stands on the precipice where she has to look at someone she can't find a reason to kill, like a moral judgment of, and she goes, "I can't do that."
Yeah,
and I think
she doesn't even like think like to harm him.
No, there's not a moment where she raises her hammer against him.
Yeah,
she is pointing at Brittler lying bloody on the ground and going, "Please, kind sir, let me kill him."
Yeah, I know he is evil, and he's like, that's a crazy thing to say, and I'm a kind person. I'm going to stand in your way. And like, she has absolutely like nothing in her that's like, I guess I'm doing the moral calculus now.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know if this is like meant to cohere into the episode saying something about like violent resistance or anything, but like it's in there.
I think fundamentally, like it, I would say that this episode is at least not trying to go get him. Is at least not trying to make any point about the like moral justifications of violent resistance. I think this is a much more personal, like deeply individualized telling of how do you do moral calculus, right? Because this is someone who gets to have the cosmic goggles of is this person bad or not, right? And eventually she comes upon a situation where you find someone who's really, really, really bad, like not just on a personal level, but like on a much larger sense. But you also have to kill this completely innocent, nice, good person.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's very interesting because like I think this is still morally ambiguous. Like, and what she's doing is not resolving that calculus either way. She decides to say, "I'm not going to participate in the system that has me make these calculus."
Yeah. And I guess if you like go to a more basic level as well, you can just like I think the episode says something quite simple but also like very true, which is that like at heart people tend to be deontologists.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I can't do the evil thing. Especially like and you can reason yourself into it, but like when push comes to shove, like people by and large are not going to like swing the hammer on like somebody who is just like a guy who's like kind.
I think it's really interesting because like I think to some extent like you can look at this as like utilitarian versus the ontology, and I think you can make a very simple analysis. But I'm gonna add the slight spin that this is not about deontology versus utilitarianism. It's about a deontologist who represents, as you say, like everyday people in Nida, and the demon who is very aggressively utilitarian and is a bit too excited about being utilitarian. But like I think it's interesting, right? Because like it's very easy to make utilitarianism the evil ideology here of philosophy, but Nida doesn't justify it that way. Nida says, here's a pedophile who is abusing his daughter, a brick to the head. You're evil, a brick to the head here is good. Like, Gomp is the one who puts the spin on, this will make her abuse less bad, and she will recover quicker. But that's not information Nida really cares about. In all honesty. Like it's good,
he just
but
strikes.
Yeah.
I think like it's not interested in giving answers, but I think it's interested in situating people in systems.
Yeah, and in those systems, examining, do moral philosophies make sense? Can we trust them to make sense of the systems we live in?
Yeah.
Do you strike the pedophile with a hammer? Or the Breck in this case? Do you strike the wife killer with a hammer? Excuse me. Do you strike Brittler with a hammer? And these are in the moment, right? Like this, she, apart from Brittler, maybe, but like even there, like I think you can make a both deontological and utilitarian argument to kill him, right?
Yeah.
But she doesn't go, I am doing this to prevent something. She's like, this is a bad person, I'm going to kill them. And the moment you then get into the position where she says, I can't kill this second person, this innocent person, to kill the evil person, you now have to go back and reckon with all she's done, all the people she's killed.
Yeah. And like it's not resolved through anyone's agency, right? It's just resolved by way of like the system coming to its final conclusion. And I guess if you want to like make a grand or draw a grand point from it, it's that like maybe the episode can be read as saying that like a system that like asks people, like puts people into these positions, like cannot persist. But you know,
but it doesn't give us the hard or it doesn't give us the hard answer at the end.
No, it doesn't.
It poses these are the questions, or these are the consequences of the system we live in. You, on some level, are going to have to look at other people and judge them. Like that is part of what we do.
Yeah.
And I think this is an interesting point because I think this is an episode you could totally have made much more in your face about like Instagram, TikTok justice, right? Like this is something you could have genuinely very much integrated people making these snap decisions to be like, oh, this person in this video had weird body language. He's probably cheating on his girlfriend, and we should harass him. We should do this because he's evil. And they don't. And I think that's probably for the better because I don't think it would have been handled well. But I think on some level it is genuinely impressive to create this episode that is temporally not where we are, but very much has this like stuff we can think about today so directly. I think that's quite good.
Yeah, and like it situates, it sort of pits like the sense of like the desire for judgment against like all these like very fleshed out characters and people. Like apart from the Nazi, like everyone is like quite human and quite alive. Right? Like even like the awful shop assistant, like
she's petty evil, right? Like
she's petty evil, but like we see her like having like a genuine like moment of revelation at like seeing someone she perversely believes in, and like we see like the sort of like small c conservative shop owner who's just sort of like aiding and abetting like someone who will turn out to be Hitler, and like who, I don't know, like maybe if like he got faced with the choice, maybe, or rather with like the tap on cosmic truth, like maybe he would get his shit together, right? But of course he doesn't have that. He's just like sort of like going with the flow, and there's just all these like very living people that are and like crucially like the wife killer is like the best example of this, because he's just like so heavily humanized, and we're just like left to see like we're like confronted with like the urge for judgment, and that urge is at every point met with humanity, met with like people.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's a specific scene with the shopkeeper where she's like flirting with, I assume, her boyfriend, but you know, who knows, maybe it's just a random person who walked in and she has great chemistry with him. And then like, you know, God comments on it as like, oh yeah, she dies unmarried and he beats his future wife.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I think that she dies unmarried is such like an interesting detail for him to throw in, because it's like, that almost feels like it's a, yeah, don't worry, this horrible person will be miserable in the future.
Yeah. But of course, like it's never like left to flourish, because like the sort of urge to judgment is like it is just like straight up situated with like hell, with the demons. And like ultimately, like it is like thwarted at every turn, because like the messenger of it turns against it. Nita outwits them, and well, almost.
Yeah.
And you know, hell probably won't be happy at all the bureaucracy.
Yeah, no, it's stunning to me to see a Black Mirror episode come together properly.
Yeah, and I like it has like two twists, right? Like the world actually ends,
Hmm.
and we have like I guess the love story is a bit cheesy, but like it puts like a um gosh, what what does that say?
The love story?
Yeah, like the happy ending for Nita.
I think like you could probably make like a reading of this as being a bit satirical about the selfish nature of like the ontology and like our inability to do what needs to be done. But I think fundamentally like the love story to me is taking these two people who are outcasts who clearly have
Yeah.
not enjoyed their time in their respective systems and together leaving them behind. I think there's a point to be made here about
I
like
guess it's escapist.
yeah, it's escapist. It's about happiness in intersectionality, like finding a path outside the societies we live in. And it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
obviously it's unrealistic, but
Yeah, I mean, so is the murder apocalypse.
for sure.
And I think like that's something I want to pull on, because like the way they find a way out is by sort of looking um like to the person closest to them and going like, maybe us together can like escape, and they do, right? And I think that's like I think that is probably like the heart of the episode, is that like in connection we have like solace and escape from like these systems of
because they are literally being
violence.
sent to like
Yeah.
the worst possible place you can think of,
Yeah.
and she willingly chooses that with him rather than continue. Well, I mean, she's about to be destroyed, admittedly, but more metaphorically chooses that over the world she has lived in.
Yeah. And I it is I guess I do think it is just fundamentally quite escapist, but it is so in a charming way.
I think so too, and I think there is something to it. I think it
Yeah.
is like a fair thing to build on because clearly them trying to obey the laws of their respective systems has not worked.
Yeah, no, and I know. I guess that is like the closest I can find to the heart of the episode, and I think that is it.
Yeah,
And
it does it well.
yeah,
Like
it's
I'm very happy to be able to be nice.
yeah, it's it's borderline cheesy, but like it's beautiful. Like
Yeah.
it's a moment of like the episode never is insincere, right? Because everyone is treated quite humanely. Like maybe it's like a bit funny at points, but it's never insincere. Everyone is given depth, and then it just like doubles down so hard on like that sort of sweet sincerity in the end that it it works, and it's quite something.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good note to end on.
Yeah, and for our next episode,
We had one that, in a spiritual way started it all.
Yeah.
Because we had a very long argument about this
Yes.
episode.
we will be going to watch season 5 in regular order, and the first episode of season 5 is Black Mirror Striking Vipers.
There we go.
So join us next time to Dewatch Striking Vipers.
And start on our first new season.
That's right.
Yeah.
I've got to get back on the phone because I'm just getting a never mind. That's just an announcement for the million hours we've waited so far. But the queue is long because hell is a bit full right now.
Yeah, I heard her some others also calling about this. So
yeah, I wish we could have run away with a hot demon.
Yeah.
But
I really feel shafted, honestly.
Alas, we sit together alone on this scorched earth, waiting to get through the call center.
Can you hear the steel beams creaking?
It's probably nothing.